Hey, everybody, welcome to this live episode of Think Business. I'm looking forward to talking to Joy Mbanugo. Joy, it's great to connect with you, and thanks for being taking time to be on Think Business.
Thank you.
I'm a business coach, and I work with successful people who are stuck, and I get them unstuck. I think community, we talk about this all the time. This platform of a podcast, it's what I love about it, and what guests love about it is I bring on guests to give guidance on how to get people unstuck, whether it's in their business life, their personal life, and talking to you today, I think people are going to get some nuggets on how to get unstuck in both. Let me just read a little bit of your bio. You're a go-to market finance infrastructure expert, and you've implemented systems to prepare companies to go public. You've worked in finance for 19 years for Ernst & Young, Google, and BlackRock. And you do some really incredible things. You are with Google now, and let's talk about finance today, right? So you basically help people design success through your financial guidance.
Yeah, so I a few years ago, I had friends or a friend who started her own company and just had some questions about finance. And my background is tax and capital markets and accounting. And she was like, "Oh, can you help me?" I was like, "Sure, no problem," because I enjoy talking about finance. So one of the things that people don't think about when they start a company is just creating financials. So I helped her create financials, income statement, balance sheet, and then also just modeling out like a financial model, what her potential cash flows would be depending on different types of investments. So if she got $100,000 from an angel investor, $1 million, and just trying to figure out how much money she would actually need to raise or borrow or like just generate on her own.
Yeah. That sounds pretty great. And the way you talk about it you make it sound so easy. And I think, I think a lot of times people find everything you just said very complicated.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you were able to, not only with her, but with many people, guide them through the process, right?
Yeah.
And so talk about how you guide people through the process and when and how people should ask for help.
Yeah, I think you should ask for help early and often. And if you have friends who are in finance, like hit them up immediately. Like if you're starting a company, I can't emphasize that enough. I think people focus a lot on product, which is great, or service, depending on the type of company. And if you, let's say you're a lawyer or a doctor, I have a law degree, and lawyers and doctors tend not to think about finances, right? Or engineers as well, they think about the product, they think about the service, they think about the offering, and finance comes dead last. I mean, you see that in startups. My husband works in startups, and it's interesting, like you'll look at the company, they'll have 100 salespeople, 100 engineers, and like one person in finance. So I always say, think about finance, think about putting an infrastructure in place, think about getting an accounting system, thinking about hiring an accountant, whether you get like an accountant based, in the US, or you get a contract accountant via Upwork. Just putting some of the basics in place, I think really help people. And even like for me in my career, it's helped me navigate my career, like going from company to company and group to group. I started in audit, I moved over to tax, and now I'm in finance in an FP&A type role.
Yeah.
And I have to think about what are we selling? Like, what's the actual product? And some of it can be complicated, and you just have to dig into the details. What are you selling? How much are you selling it for? Who are you selling it to? How much do you think you can sell?
Yeah. One of the things you talk about, these, companies they have 100 of this and 100 of this, and they have one finance. I find that a lot of times with visionaries, and you're talking about your husband, but this has to do with a lot of startups.
Yes.
Is they're visionaries, and they're thinking about the big idea and the people, reverse engineering the idea and getting the people to execute, to build the dream and the idea. But they aren't thinking of implementation and the finance and the infrastructure. And I think the most successful, I work with solopreneurs to fortune companies and everything in between. And what I find is that the most successful people understand their weaknesses.
Yeah.
They don't try to necessarily enhance them, but they bring on the right partners.
Yes.
And this one, as far as bringing in the fractional CFO, the finance, the accounting, the someone who can look at the infrastructure, the budgeting, the expenses.
Yeah.
I mean, this is pretty much the most important part of the company that people are overlooking. And so what additional guidance would you give them early stages for those who don't know how to ask for help and aren't even really thinking that they need this yet?
Yeah, I take a step back and think about. I love my dad always. When I was younger, my dad made me read a Covey, like begin with the end in mind. And so
Correct. Yeah.
if you are a visionary, you're probably thinking like scaling, hiring rapidly and scaling, and you're thinking about product, and you think about getting a product out to market, product market fit, and all of those things. But you can't you need funding to do that, whether it's family and friends, whether it's investors, whether it's a grant, whether it's a loan. And to do that, you need to have financials. Like most people are only going to see financials. Like your mom and your grandma may not want to see your financials. That's
Right.
fine. But you're not going to scale. Most
Right.
people, if you're lucky enough to have a wealthy family, that's great. But most people don't. And so most people need to have financials because your investors, the
Right.
bank's going to want to see them. Even if you go for a grant company is going to want to see them. So my personal advice to folks is to start with Upwork, because you can find a lot of really good. I've done it before and helped people find really good finance professionals, CPAs, CFAs on Upwork who are affordable. I mean, big companies, Fortune 500 companies, and like the big private startups that have multi-billion-dollar valuations, they have the big four accounting firms. Like I worked at EY. They hire EY, KPMG, Deloitte. Um, Whereas, if you're a solopreneur just starting out, you don't have that kind of funding. You need to get the best bang for your buck. And I say Upwork is a great place to start.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, number one rule of business, you need enough cash to open up your doors the next day.
Yes.
I mean, it's, and sometimes people are, it's funny to say, but sometimes people aren't thinking like that.
Yeah.
I want to talk about, so we're talking about the planning. I want to talk about forecasting for a minute, because one of the things I also see is our companies not forecasting. They're not looking at the right indicators. They're not even forecasting many to begin with.
Yeah.
But they don't know what indicators to look like. They're not looking at the right indicators. I think COVID changed that a little bit, because I think it stopped people in their tracks to say, wow, there's a lot of things, even on, in addition to the lockdown or COVID, that we should have been paying attention to and forecasting, right? Forecasting out 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 3 years, and then reverse engineering kind of how that's going to affect our business. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, some companies look at forecasting in a couple of different ways. Like you can, depending on your CFO or depending on your finance professional, VP of finance, you can build out a forecast that would go 5 years out. And then and you'll iterate 5 years out. And some people may say, and I know all the hardcore finance professionals will say, Joy, you can't forecast 5 years out. You can't, but you can have a vision of where you want to go. Mm-hmm. And then you can take that first year and look at that and use that as your forecast for the next year and iterate and look, every month, or depending on the company. Some people like dynamic forecasting where they look at it every week, every month, every quarter. So if you forecast it out into, let's say, 2023, you own your own company, and you own your own company. If you haven't created a forecast for 2023, hopefully this is a little nudge for you to do a forecast for at least 2023. Beyond would be great. But once you have that forecast, what you can do is start to look at where you actually land from an actual standpoint and do forecast to actuals or budget to actuals, depending on, what language you use in your company. And there are, I can't pub any type of tools, but there are tools out there that you can use that will do this for you. Some tools like automate forecasting. So if you're fortunate enough to have money to buy a system that can help do that, I would say do it. It's a great investment in addition to an accounting system.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So right now you are you're the head of partnership and industry solutions finance at Google iCloud. Um, what is that? What explain, for those who are listening who don't know what the cloud is, let's start there, right?
Yeah. It's like I call the cloud like a place. It's like a magical place where you can put a ton of data. So the best way to think about it is you take a lot of photos if you travel or you have children or you like take photos of nature or whatever your photo hobby is if you have one. Where do you store your photos? So back in the day, there used to be Shutterfly and all these things, and so you at a point in time you run out of storage. Like you can't store, so you can only store so many photos on your laptop, right? So you need to have another place to store them. So there's this magical place called the cloud where you can store massive quantities of data, and companies charge a price for that storage and other types of solutions. But the easiest way to think about it for you and I is like, I have a ton of photos. I love taking selfies. I have a 10-month-old. I love taking pictures of him. I take maybe 100 pictures of him a day.
Right.
I blow up my laptop doing that. So I use, my email is in the cloud, and I store all of his photos in the cloud as well.
Nice. And so what's one of the number one things you've taken from working at Google?
Be nimble. So when I first joined Google, I've been at Google for a little over 4 years. I'm in my third role, and this likely will not be my last role. I probably will pivot into another role at some time if my manager looks at this. And it's highly encouraged. That's the thing. Like that's the really neat thing about Google. Like folks are internal mobility is actually encouraged, especially if you have a great manager, which I do. So just being nimble. I think when I worked at EY, I was able to move around a lot. But that was because I had great sponsors. But Google, they just encourage it. Like you're encouraged to look at it day one, the day you come through the door. And it's just a great place to work.
I love it. Let's talk about great managers for a minute. You said I have a great manager. I'm a big believer people leave managers, not companies.
Yes.
I find myself doing a lot of coaching with managers in all different types of industries all over the globe. What makes a good manager?
I would say empathy and or high EQ. I think, especially in tech, I think a lot of people focus on the technical. If you're an engineer, can you code? Did you have errors in your code? Did your system work? Does the tool work? Blah, blah, blah. And in finance, the same thing. And how accurate is your forecast? How great is your model? The margins that you estimated on this deal, are they accurate? That's all fine and dandy, but that's like super technical and super mechanical. I think what's important is having empathy and understanding what your team or staff, I'm thinking about my own team, what your team or staff want out of their career.
Yeah.
And giving the empathy and the EQ to help them get there. Not thinking, oh, I just need this person on my team so that they can make me look good and so that we can reach these deliverables. We have a forecast we need to deliver. We have monthly financials, quarterly financials, all of the basics. It's like, okay, that's great. But how a good manager helps their team and their staff grow beyond the day-to-day.
Yeah, I love it. All right, let's talk before we move into a quick speed round. Right, okay. You are a strategist. We've talked a lot about financing. Your resume is incredible of who you've worked with and who you've worked for. You have a law degree, but you're also talking strategy with people on cryptocurrency and blockchain technology.
Yeah,
I think for many people, they're hearing that as as French. They don't. It's and even. And I've had a lot of people on the show talking about, cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. And I think it's taking a lot of, I think they say you have to hear something 50 times before it sinks in.
Yeah.
It's taking a lot for people to really understand what it is because there's no real place for it. And so, I kind of gave you the layup of talking about the cloud so we can move into a little bit of this. So kind of give the kindergarten, couple sentence version of this. and where you see the future of crypto and blockchain.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many different potential adoptions for cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. I think for me, being a finance professional, the way I think about it is settlement. So, and that may sound like French to some people. So let's think about, okay, if you own stock or if you want to wire money, um, how long does it take to settle a trade, right? Like, okay, if you use one of the big brokerage houses, it could take anywhere from T+2. I think that's the industry standard now, right? So I own ABCD Inc. stock. I sell it today. Today's Thursday. It probably won't settle until Monday, Tuesday. Blockchain technology can help speed that up so that that sale can be instant. I can get my money from that immediately and buy cut the DTCC and all the powers that be, or even wiring money. And some of that you see with like Venmo, whereas before,
Yeah.
think about it, you wouldn't be able to send money instantly. PayPal, was at the forefront of this, and then Venmo came along. And so from my where I'm excited about this is all in the finance area. There's some interesting things going on. I think the founder of Ethereum was thinking about like using crypto as a way for identity, to preserve and protect identity. I don't know very much about that space. I'm not a cybersecurity person, so I don't talk about it. But I read about it, and I think that that's super interesting. So there are a lot of different use cases, but for me, I'm always thinking about, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm always thinking about finance.
All right, good. All right, good. Well, we'll have to have you back and talk more about, crypto and blockchain a little bit. All right. You ready, Joy, for a quick speed round?
Yes, let's do it.
Book that's had the biggest impact on you.
Probably the Covey book that my dad gave me when I was in college.
7 Habits.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great one. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received.
Be patient.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. People have to be really patient right now. One thing that everyone needs to do to infuse more infrastructure in their company is
get an accounting system in place immediately.
Yeah, I like it. And the last question, the best way to be and stay nimble is
just to be flexible, to have a flexible mindset.
Yeah.
Mentally be flexible.
Yeah, I love that. Joy, I can't thank you enough for taking time to be on Think Business, Think Community, as we always talk about, providing you tools to get unstuck. I just want to highlight a couple of things, and Joy, you shared a ton, but a couple of things that resonated with me that I just want to kind of highlight. As we grow in today's world, and I see this as a business coach all the time, it is so important, and Joy shared this, to put infrastructure in place. It is a way so you can scale and scale faster, be nimble, which we just shared a little bit more about. And I think lastly, one of the most important things that sometimes gets overlooked is the power of empathy and EQ, right? Yes. We have to study that on our own. I have a coaching group that I do. It's a $15 a month coaching group, and it's new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, micro learning to keep people engaged. And the book that I for my Wisdom Wednesday this week promoted was Emotional Intelligence, because it's something that I think we always have to be working on, and I think we have a responsibility. There's actually something called spiritual intelligence, which is SQ. That's pretty fascinating as well. So I just want to thank you, Think Community. Thanks so much. Joy, I appreciate being on the show. Any last thoughts?
SQ, you have to tell me a book on that. I haven't. That's very interesting to me. My dad is a minister, so when I hear spirituality, my ears kind of go bing.
Yeah. Well, there's Amy Lynn Durham. She's an SQ professional. She has a company called Create Magic at Work. I can make some introductions for you.
Yeah.
I think so. Stay on after.
Yeah.
But her work is really great, and it focuses in the SQ space, which most people don't know about, which
No.
is just another form of how you can, really connect. So
Yeah. I love it.
I'll make an introduction for you.
Mhm.
Think Community, thanks so much. Joy, who are your ideal clients, and how can people connect with you?
Anyone can be an ideal client. They can connect with me on my website, www.joybanugo.com, or email me at joy@joybanugo.com, or email my assistant at admin@joybanugo.com.
I love it. All right, Joy, thank you so much. And Think Community, if there's anything I can do for you, jondwoskin.com. Thanks so much, Joy. Appreciate it. It
Thanks,
was great.
Josh.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.